really wish I had some kind of lead-in, and maybe one of these days I'll have one, but not today. Don't have my watch. I think, what's today's date? 15th? Oh, I'm way off. 18th. 18th of August, Thursday. Video I just posted literally like 2 minutes ago. I got rained out coming back from the gym, but that's okay. I don't care. It's my choice. I ran in the rain. Mother Nature provided me my shower. So, it's weird for me, but I'll try to be cool. Today, this is the video that I promised a little while back, that I wanted to get into more things, my own personal experience with some things that happened. And it's going to be a little bit, of lecture, a little bit of confessional, and a little bit of think about it. Okay? So, start things off. I want to talk a little bit about panic response. Yeah, I hate to tell you guys this, but yeah, I did. I was a college professor for a little bit of time. Maybe I'll go back to doing it again so I can be lecture-y. Panic response in all mammals, humans, we all do it. It's the 3 F's: fight, flight, freeze. And as human beings, panic response can happen. It doesn't even have to be like a life-threatening situation. It can just be something that, for whatever reason, your brain finds to be stressful. So, fight is obvious. You literally attack, whether it be, in our case, human beings, verbal or physically, whatever it is that you find threatening. Flight, run away, obvious, again. And freeze is like that deer in the headlights, that's a good way of looking at it, or what possums do, they play dead. For human beings, freeze response would be like the quintessential panic attack. When you see somebody who's having a panic attack, generally speaking, they cannot breathe, they cannot function, they cannot think. A lot of times they just kind of fall down, they'll pass out. That's usually because they hyperventilate. But if they don't pass out, a lot of times they'll just go into a fetal position and just completely shut down. And the reason why I'm covering all this is because I have to kind of get to my own anecdotal response. Yeah, this chair is like all beat to hell, but whatever. My cat may pop up somewhere behind us at some point too. I can hear him. Oh, he's over there climbing shit like he always does. I have never been, and if anybody who does actually know me in real life watches this, they will know that I speak the truth about myself. I have never been one who freezes when it comes to a stressful situation. I have always been, very rarely flight either. Very, very rarely run away. Maybe when I was younger, when I was a little kid, but since reaching adulthood, 100% fight. And fight response doesn't necessarily mean you're fighting. Like if there's a physical opponent, yes, you're fighting. But let's just say it's a hypothetically speaking, you're on a really short time constraint and you're trying to like pack your house and you got to pack your shit, get it on the truck, whatever. The fight response would be, okay, I know exactly what I have to do. It's like this has got to happen, this has got to happen, this has got to happen. That would be like the fight. It's like you find the solution to the problem and you attack the problem and you take it out. Flight would be ignoring it and walking away and saying, I just want to go. I'm gonna go out drinking tonight. Whatever. Freezing would be freaking out, laying in your bed crying. Okay. Anyone who knows me in real life knows that I have always been a fight person. I've always been very good at looking at a real world problem and breaking it into little bits. And I always in my head, I would have like a timeline of this has to happen and then this has to happen and then this and this and this and this. I didn't even need to write it down. It would be in my head and I would know exactly how to make it happen. And I'm going to use the moving example because it's applicable. So I've moved a lot in the last, since 2014, I have moved, let me see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This makes move number 6. I've moved 6 times since 2014. So, and I've helped my kids move a couple times too. So, if there's one damn thing I know how to do, it's I know how to pack a damn house and make it so that it can be put on a frickin' truck and moved. Okay, leave that there. So, going forward. So, that's, now you know who I am. In January, roughly around the middle of January, I got COVID. I caught it from my husband who had the jab. I didn't have the jab. He brought it home to me. And I didn't get very sick at all. Didn't have a fever, didn't have body aches, didn't have any of that stuff. I just had a little bit of a sore throat, a lot of fatigue, one for a couple days, and at the end, I started having a little bit of the cough, and I have had viral bronchitis years ago when I used to work at the Lone Star Gym. God knows how, I mean, we had all kinds of students in there, so who knows what was circulating around in that gym. Well, I caught viral bronchitis, and it's the cough that I got with COVID felt a lot like that. So I immediately called up my COVID doctor, and they gave me an inhaled steroid, and it cleared up in like a day and a half. And I did a lot of preventative stuff through this whole COVID thing. I never lost my sense of taste and smell, but I'm not surprised because I've been kind of overloading myself with zinc and vitamin D and vitamin C, and I live pretty clean. I don't have any kind of major health issues. So I was really low risk, despite the fact that I'm over 50. I wasn't too concerned about it. So, but I catch it, like I said, mild case, and I get over it. And my younger son comes in to visit for his birthday. His birthday is February the 9th. And we go, I have a friend who has a shooting range right outside the neighborhood where I used to live. And my son wanted to go shooting, so we gather up a whole bunch of the handguns. And we go over, and I'm trying to shoot, and I can't keep my sights on the target because I have this jitter in my hands that I've never had. It was like that my tiny little Glock 43, which weighs next to nothing and was suddenly too heavy for me to hold. I just couldn't keep the sights on the target, to the point that I got so frustrated that I just said, Gabe, you just go ahead and you shoot off the ammo we have, and I'll just sit here and load magazines for you, because I guess maybe I'm just not fully recovered from COVID. So, he fired off the rest of the rounds, and we went home, and I didn't really think anything of it. And then he left, and the week after he left, I just became like horribly despondent, just really sad, really depressed. I didn't want to do anything. I would lay in my bed for hours and just cry, which is not typical for me. just, the world is awful, my life is awful, and I've had some concerns, but I've always been able to cope, and suddenly I just couldn't cope. Couldn't cope. This is, so, because of that, and I'm not saying that COVID changed how I felt. It just like magnified everything to the point that it was just unmanageable. I don't know how else to describe it. And there is some research coming out now about they're starting to see a link between this severe depressive bouts post-COVID infection, and they think that it is linked to depletion of certain neurotransmitters, that COVID just comes in and wipes it out, which makes sense. And here I go lecturing again, because the way COVID gets into your body is it attaches to the ACE2 receptor site in your cells. Okay, ACE2 is linked to blood pressure and fluid balance in your body. I'm not a biochemist, okay? I am an exercise physiologist, so I have a very basic knowledge of how this works. Like I said, I'm not a biochemist or a medical professional, but I do know a little bit about it because I had to learn about it. But the other thing that this ACE2 is also an integral part in some of the molecular production chains of dopamine, serotonin, and there's a whole bunch of other things, but we're mainly focused on dopamine and serotonin, the way your body produces them. And most of that is produced in your gut. And then your bloodstream picks it up and takes it up to your brain, and your brain picks, your brain cells grab it out of your bloodstream. And dopamine is like the love chemical, euphoria. Dopamine is the thing that if you have an addiction, especially an opiate addiction, that is what gets triggered when you use the opiates, or even if you're a gambler, if you have a gambling addiction, it hits your brain, and your brain produces the dopamine, which is this euphoric, love feeling, and that's why you get so addicted to it, because it's like the best feeling ever. And it's also the thing that when you first fall in love with somebody, your brain produces this is how your brain reacts. It's the same thing, and that's what makes addiction so hard to battle, because it's linking into a natural process. So what they're finding is that COVID, by disrupting this ACE2 receptor site on your cells, and it's disrupting all these other biochemical chains, that for some people it really, really messes up your dopamine levels and serotonin levels, and so you have this severe depressive episode. And from a little bit that I read, it's just lucky me, it's most common in women like 40 to 55, like perimenopause, menopause, right in there is when there seems to be the demographic that it hits the most, which, that's where I'm at, right in there. So lucky me. I don't have a bad physical case. I have this little neurological twitch, which I will revisit about. But I get this neurological thing that just completely, it just hammers me. And some things happen, and I just didn't cope very well. I didn't cope. I'm sorry. I didn't cope very well. At all. At all. Not at all. At all. Normally I'd be able to pick apart a problem and figure out how to handle it, and I just couldn't. I couldn't. And I just couldn't cope. We'll just leave it at that. Okay? We'll just leave it at that. And so I end up even worse than I was. I mean, it just seemed like I just kept going down and down and down. So, to the point that I went to, I told you my one video, I said I'm spread between 2 states. So I was trying to pack my stuff, and here it is. I've moved. I illustrated it for you how many times I've moved. I know how to pack a house. I know how to move. And here he comes. Here he comes. Yeah, see, I told you. Let me move him out of the way. Come on, buddy, get out of the way. I would wake up in the morning, and I would think about, and this is just how I've always operated. I've always been one of those people that I generally wake up in the morning, and while I'm laying there for a little while, I'm thinking about, these are the things I need to do, and this is how I'm going to do them. And so I would wake up in the morning, and I would start thinking about, these are the things I need to do, and I would become completely just overwhelmed with the thought of what I had to do, to the point that I remember just, I didn't even know what a panic attack was. Okay, I mean, I know what a panic attack is. I have never in my entire life, I will be 53 in October, never in my entire life had a panic attack. Never. I am one of those people that I will just find a way to get through shit. That's just how I operate. Or if it is a physical threat, I will defend myself. I don't freeze and I don't run. Okay, I don't. But I remember I was laying in bed one morning, and I just couldn't get out of bed. I couldn't get out of bed. I was just laying there, and I was literally in the fetal position, crying so hard that I could not breathe, and I felt like my airway was restricting, just like, I could feel it closing down. I'm like, so there's somehow God, maybe grace of God, and I'm not that religious, but maybe that was it. There was a little teeny tiny rational part of my brain that said, take a second and figure out what this is. What is this? What are you feeling that is causing you to have this response? Okay. And that little tiny bit of my brain somehow, some way was able to function. And I was like, this is panic. This is panic. This is panic. This feels like a vertigo attack without the vertigo. And then I realized that I guess when I used to have the horrible spinning vertigo, you have no control over your body. If you haven't had one, I can't describe it. I've had people say to me, oh, I had, like, some people will have the crystals in their ear, and they'll have a bout of vertigo, and they'll try to tell me, oh, I know exactly what you're talking about. I had that. No, you don't. I'm not trying to be a pain in the ass, but I'm going to tell you right now, no, you don't. You have crystals in your ear, and your bout lasts for 15, 20 minutes, maybe an hour. That was a mild attack for me. Okay. 9, 10, 11 hours at a time. See that fan that's spinning over my head? Imagine that's your field of vision. The spin, to the point that it's like you projectile vomit everything that you have in your stomach, if you have anything in your stomach. And if you don't, you just sit there and dry heave. to the point that you're sore the next day because you were dry heaving so violently, and it just wasn't. Chronic Meniere's vertigo, when you get end stage, is not a lot of fun, and it takes a lot out of you. And I mean, I crawled across my house one time in the middle of a vertigo attack because I didn't have a choice, because I was by myself, and I had laid on my tile bathroom floor for over an hour, and I was cold and my hip hurt, and the world was still spinning, and I crawled across my house into the back bedroom and crawled into bed and just willed myself to go to sleep. Okay, that's neither here nor there. So what I put together, and this we're talking about this would have been May. Because the end of April was when things just kind of really fell apart for me. May. So I'm having this, and then I realize this is a panic attack. That's what this is. I'm feeling panic. I'm feeling panic. So that once you kind of realize it, or maybe it's just me, and I have some really good friends. Thank God, I have some really, really good friends who were willing to listen to me for hours at a time, or sit with me and help me get through these bouts. So I was 2 weeks away. So this went on, and I was leaving Houston on June the 11th. And I just, so we're in May, and I'm having this issue, and I'm just trying my best to get my shit together, and it just doesn't seem like it's getting together. And I have people telling me, you need to do this, you need to do that, you need to medication. Everybody wants to give you fucking medication, okay? And I've always been just really, really against over medicating. I just don't believe in it. I don't trust the drug companies. I don't trust the way they test drugs nowadays. That's a whole different discussion. And I was just like, nope, not doing it. And when we get to the end of this, you'll see why. And I just really resisted. I was like, I've always been able to white knuckle myself through things, and I've had some pretty shitty times in my life, and I will fucking do it again. And it just wasn't getting any better. And I was losing weight. Oh my God, I lost so much weight. Actually, believe it or not, okay, I have actually gained some weight back. And the weight loss got worse. And the reason why I wear stuff like this is because most everything that I own that has a waistline doesn't fit me anymore. Or it'll fit me, but I can literally put on a pair of shorts or a pair of pants and just, like pull them up and just whoop them off right down. I mean, it's, unless I have a belt, they're not staying on. Okay, I lost that much weight. I think I lost 20 pounds in a month. So, God damn it. That was the thunderstorm that I ran through earlier, and that just scared the living shit out of me. I hope that's not my truck going off. It shouldn't be. It's in the garage. So 2 weeks before I leave for North Carolina, I broke down and I called my medical provider, and I'm just like, I didn't want to do this, but I'm just not coping. And but I made it very clear to her, I'm very, very, very sensitive to a lot of medications. I'm just one of those people that if there is a rare but bad side effect to a drug, I'm probably going to have it. And it's just happened to me too many times, okay? I talked about that in my very first video when I was talking about Meniere's. They put me on some of the drugs, and then lo and behold, I get all the bad side effects. That one drug, the one that made all my hair fall out, also shut down my kidneys. So there you go. And that's when I made that, for that drug, I said, rather be deaf than be on dialysis. So there we go. Never had kidney problems before then. Thank God I don't have any, because I discontinued the medication once I figured it out. Okay, so I go to my medical provider and I'm just like, I need something. I'm having panic attacks and I've got too much shit to do. And I can't just be laying around, and I can't be laying around on my bed crying all the time, in the fetal position, shaking and crying to the point that I can't even breathe. I'm crying so damn hard, And so she found a medication. It's an older one, and it's one that actually pregnant women can be on. So it's safe. And I felt better about it because somebody's texting me. Because it was an older med. It's been around a long time, and I have a friend who is she's a nurse, and she's a maternity nurse, and so she was like, oh yeah, that's the one we can put our pregnant mommies on and whatever. And I took it, and it helped. It did help with the panic. Okay, it helped with the panic. Didn't help with my eating or anything like that, but it got the panic under control. So I left and I went to North Carolina, and I wasn't just having random panic attacks. I was still having issues. Like, there was some shit that happened on the way to North Carolina that I lost my shit about. I lost a tire in the middle of the night because I hit a fucking lag bolt that was like this big with a head about that big around, that went right through my passenger side front tire. And I mean, my tire was a pancake within 5 minutes. And the place I had to pull off to was right outside this crackhead neighborhood, and it was a complete shit show. And it's like, I drive a very expensive truck, and they just all started circling. Oh, look, flat tire, expensive truck, there's a U-Haul over there. Thank God my sons were with me, and my one son is a police officer, and he kept his cool because I was losing my shit. Which also pisses me off, because normally I wouldn't lose my shit like that. I wouldn't have. But I did. I did that night, and it wasn't pretty. And it could have gotten really ugly. But thank God, my son, Christopher, kept his cool, and we made it to where we needed to make it. And then when we get to North Carolina, and it's the same thing, while we're unloading my truck, I'm like freaking out, because I'm thinking, I've got way too much shit. How am I going to fit all of this shit in this place that I'm going to be living? And I'm just like completely like losing it, breaking down, crying, and my son had arranged to have all these people there to help unload the truck, and I need to be able to direct traffic, and I felt like I was holding on by my fingernails. And so here again, I'm just, how many goddamn times have I moved? And I've been in the same situation, and I have been the one directing traffic. This goes here, this goes here, this goes here. Never, and I'm just like losing my goddamn mind. But I get through it. And I get my crap all sorted out and settled in, and and I'm living in my new little place that's just mine. But when I start noticing, because this first medication they put me on, you take it twice a day. And what I started noticing is that, so I'd take it in the morning, and I would take it in the evening, and about an hour after I would take it, I would just become like severely depressed. Not panicked. So this isn't anxiety. This is like grief, depression. I don't know how else. And so I would just sit there and cry, scream at the ceiling, scream at certain people. Just cry for, a good 2 hours, usually. And it's exhausting. You don't understand how, God, I mean, I'm a fitness fanatic, and I mean, I probably burned more damn calories crying than I ever had in any workout I've ever done. I mean, there was even one time I got up. I'm trying, in my head, I'm trying to tell myself that I need to do these things to make myself feel better and get myself back on track. And so I decide that I'm going to go hike this trail this one morning, and it's a trail I've hiked before in Great Smoky Mountain National Park, but it's about an hour drive from where I was living. It's funny because as the crow flies, it's 11 miles, but it takes an hour to get there because you can't go as the crow flies. You have to go on and run around and up the mountain, and So it was Andrews Ball Trail, if that makes anybody who's hiked up in there. And I've hiked that trail before, but it's the trailhead's in a place that's really popular. It's hard to park. So my trail guide book said a good way to do this is go really early in the morning when it's still dark, sit there on top of the mountain, because where the trailhead is, where the parking lot is, it is on top of a mountain, watch the sunrise, and then when the sun comes up, hit the trail. So that was my plan. So I drive, I get up at 4 o'clock in the damn morning, and I drive so that I'm there at 5 something, and I sit in my truck. Well, I start crying as I'm driving, okay? And I get to the trailhead, and I sit in my truck, and I cry and scream, literally, let's get real, I did. Scream at myself, scream at certain people, just to the point that I was freaking exhausted, and I didn't even do the hike because I was by the time I was done, I was like shaking. I was just like this. And I was like, I know myself. I'm an experienced hiker. I'm very safety conscious. And I just knew I wasn't safe. That I was so exhausted and just fragile. And it's not a horrible trail, but it's rocky. And the other thing that I noticed is anytime I would have these crying bouts, it just completely fucked up my equilibrium, which I already have an issue with. And I know this because I've done this trail before. There's some rocky bits, and I knew I wasn't safe. And I was the last thing, and there's no cell service up there. So I knew I was just like, it would just be my damn luck that I'll go and I'll try to push through, and I'll go hike this trail, and I'll break my freaking ankle or blow out my other knee or some stupid shit like that, and then I'll be laying on the damn trail until somebody else comes along and finds my ass. So I just cut my losses and drove back home. So that was what was happening. Every time I would take this drug, there'd be about an hour delay, and then I would have this crying jag. Okay, so I go in, and because I'm big on doing my own research, and I look up this drug, and sure enough, just like any other antidepressant, anti-anxiety drug, it's like in some cases, it will have the opposite effect. Okay, so it had helped with the anxiety for me, so I just cannot believe. I mean, honest to God, I'm just like, me, panic attack, still to this day. I'm like, what the fuck? But it was making me have this just horrible depression response. Okay, so July 4th comes along, and I have a cousin who lives in Raleigh, and I drove out to her house for July 4th weekend, and she and her husband have a boat, so we go out on their boat for one day, and that was really kind of cool, but wasn't the boat I had hoped to be on July 4th weekend. But it was nice to be able to get out and get away. And I think the next day, we like one of their friends, he had a pool party. The one good thing about losing 25 pounds is I look pretty freaking good in my 2-piece bathing suits right now. And I don't feel like I have in a while. I mean, like you saw if you watched my very first video, I said my body fat's way up. So, but right now, body fat ain't way up. So I can actually get away with a two-piece bathing suit at age 52 right now. So why not? So we went to this pool party a friend of theirs had, and that was okay. It was nice to just be around other people, but my heart wasn't in it. But while I was visiting my cousin, you know, she and I had a lot of discussions. We are first cousins. Her dad and my mom are brother and sister. And so she had told me that, you know, she had had some issues when she'd gone through some tough times in her past, and she had been put on Zoloft, which is an SSRI. And it really, really helped her. And she said, it would help you, you know, it'll help you with this obsessive thinking and the, you know, all this other crap. So when I get back to my place in Bryson City, I make contact with my medical provider, the one back here in Texas. Thank God she does telemed. And I tell her everything. So she's like, okay, you know, so I'm asking her to put me on this drug. Okay, stupid me. You'll figure it out in a second. Okay, worst mistake I've ever made. Well, yeah, probably, yeah, worst mistake I've ever made. And that's saying something, because I've made some really bad mistakes in my life. Okay, so she puts me on the lowest dose possible, right? And so I fly back here to Houston on the 11th of July, because closing on the house, selling the house. And I pick it up at the Kroger. She sends it over to the Kroger that I used to have all my scripts sent to. So I just pick it up there. So I start taking it. And first week, didn't really notice anything other than my stomach was upset. But I always thought, the way it felt is, I'm one of those people that when I'm stressing out, I don't eat. Okay, some people eat when they're stressed. I am not one of them. Okay, when I'm stressed, I don't eat. And I will get to the point that I will get so hungry that I can't eat. I know that sounds crazy, but I'll get that hungry. My stomach will be that just knotted up that it's hard to eat. That I can get a few bites in and then I'm getting nauseous and stuff's trying to come back up. And it's just not pretty. It's not pretty. So I have to like drink some fluids to get my stomach to expand before I can eat a little bit of food. And it's just, anxiety for me is really, really just like affects my body. Stress, that, you know, high stress. And trust me, I'm not going to go into great detail, but since March, I have been under an incredible amount of stress. Most of it's self-inflicted. Okay? I can't blame anybody else. Most of it's self-inflicted. Okay? So what I noticed is when I took this drug, that's what was happening. I just chalked it up to I'm stressed. You know, I'm trying to deal with some of this personal stuff that I'm trying to deal with, and I'm selling this house, and it's just the same freaking stress that I've been dealing with since March. And then the second week, so that's the first week that I'm on it, and I will call him back. And then the second week, I can't sleep. I literally went a whole entire week without sleeping. Not right now. Okay. So now I'm stressed out. I can't eat. I don't sleep. And then I start having, the third week, what starts happening is you take this medication once, and I would take it. I started because I would wake up. I would go to. I shit you not. I really shit you not. I would lay down, try to go to sleep, couldn't sleep. Finally, fall asleep at 2:30, and I would wake up at 4. Okay, so an hour and a half of sleep, and then I would feel like my blood sugar was like all crazy. My stomach's in a knot. So I started when I would wake up, I would take the medication then. So it's like 4 a.m, and I would take it, and then I would go downstairs and I would make a protein shake, just because I thought my blood sugar was like doing this crazy shit that it normally does when I don't eat and I'm not eating. And I noticed that every time, I thought that every time my blood sugar bottomed out, that it was causing me to have these kind of like bouts of crying and stuff all over again. And I was like, it's my blood sugar, it's my blood sugar. Turned out it wasn't. We're going to get there. So the 3rd week that I'm on this med, what starts happening is I would take it, about an hour would go by, and it would feel like my skin was starting to crawl. And I want to backtrack a little bit. All the way back in May, end of May, when I had COVID, my COVID doctor prescribed me, it's called fluvoxamine, which is Luvox. It's another SSRI. And because I was like so freaked out about everything that was happening, I was like, well, what's it going to hurt me? I've got a prescription for it. I'll try to take it. And I took it one time. One time I took that drug, and literally within 20 minutes of me taking it, I felt like my skin was crawling. I don't know how else to describe it. I literally felt like my skin was crawling. I felt like every muscle in my body was like tense. You know how sometimes when you first wake up and you're just like, you just want to stretch? I felt like that, but I would stretch and it wasn't being relieved, to the point that I spent 3 hours writhing in the bed. And when I say writhing, I really mean writhing in the bed, just crawling out of my goddamn skin, crying. I don't know. It was not a pleasant experience for 3 hours, until the shit, I guess, passed through my system to a certain point. That happened in May. That's Luvox. 1 dose did that to me. 1 dose, okay? And that was one of the things that I told my medical professional. I took this shit one time. This is the response I had to it. So I'm very dubious about these drugs, right? Fast forward. Sorry, my time frame's really screwy. Now we're in July. And I'm on this other SSRI, which I told you about, which is Zoloft. Still an SSRI. What starts happening on week 3 is same fucking thing. I'd take it, and within an hour, I would feel like my skin was crawling, and I would be cold. That was the other thing that was so odd. I would suddenly become like horribly, horribly cold, and the only thing that would give me any relief was I would go in the bathtub, and I would literally turn the water on completely hot, no cold, to scaldingly hot, and I would get in the bathtub, and I would be, I'm not going to be able to do, I mean, I got a short skirt, but I would literally be like this in the bathtub. And the other thing that would happen was, it's like I had all of this nervous energy and I had to get it out. So I would be like rocking back and forth. You know, my knees are like up like this, and I'm like rocking back and forth in the bathtub, and I'm crying 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 to the point that it's, if you came and talked to me, I would be like, I mean, I couldn't get a word out. It was the most gut-wrenching, horrible, just agonizing weeping. And I literally would be just thinking to myself, make it stop, make it stop, make it stop. I can't do this. Make it stop, make it stop. It was so fucking horrible. It was horrible. And this would go on for 3 or 4 hours. And then it would kind of taper off, and then would come back. And then, like, the other thing that I would do is I would go, and then I would get hot. So I start crying, and then I would get hot. So then I'd jump out of the bathtub, and I'm like dripping wet, and I'm pouring sweat, but I'm still crying. And I would crawl into the bed and literally scream into a pillow, because I don't want to freak out the neighbors, them think that, you know, somebody's being murdered over here. And it would just be the cycle, you know, hot, cold, hot, cold, hot, cold. And then sometimes if it was later in the afternoon, I would go out. There's a small balcony on this apartment, and it's, you know, it's over 100 degrees here, and I would just go sit out on, and the same thing, I would literally sit on the pavement, in the same position, rocking back and forth, you know, crying. Not sleep. So I'm not sleeping. I'm not eating. I'm having these bouts of whatever the fuck they are. There are times that I'm on the floor staring up at the ceiling saying, make it stop, make it stop, make it stop, make it stop. I can't take this, make it stop. Oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. I mean, that's literally what's going in the hamster wheel in my head. And the medical provider's answer to me was, we'll increase your dosage. Obviously, you're having some kind of depressive episode, and we're just going to increase your dosage, and we'll take you up to more of this SSRI. Okay. I am at the point that I'm not functioning as a sane human being anymore. I have to be babysat. Because when you're at that point, and I met up with a friend. I'm not going to say his name. He knows who he is. When I was in Austin briefly, I had dinner with him, and I mentioned, and there's a very fine line between when you're in such that state and you're saying make it stop, make it stop, make it stop, to actually taking action to make it stop. It's a very fine line to walk. And it terrified me, because that is not a road I wanted to go down. I have no desire to remove myself from existence. Don't. I've seen what it does to people when loved ones take their own lives, and what it does to the people that are left behind. I know some people now that have dealt with that. I knew some people I had some friends in college that dealt with that, and I would never do it to my kids. Okay? But you're walking a fine line, and I knew I wasn't processing. But here again, for whatever reason, there's still that little bitty part of my brain that is somehow rational and thinking. And I start thinking about the timeline. Because I'm thinking to myself, when I was in North Carolina, I was sleeping. I wasn't sleeping well. I mean, I still had a lot of shit going on, but I was sleeping. And I was somewhat eating. And now I'm, I can't sleep. I can't eat. I was so thin. I lost more weight when I was on this drug. That when I was in Austin, the hotel room had a full-length mirror, and I hadn't seen myself in a full-length mirror in probably 2 months. And I came out of the shower, and I looked at myself in the mirror, first I was wrapped in a towel, and then I'm a glutton for punishment, so I dropped the towel. And I was so goddamn thin. I mean, every rib, I could see every rib. And I turned sideways, and I mean, like here, I didn't have an ass left. It had just completely disappeared. I've looked, I mean, I was really rapidly approaching the point of looking like I came out of, you know, a concentration camp. It's like I was starting to see the bones in the back of my hips. I was so fucking thin. And I literally was like, that cannot be me. That can't be me. But it was me. So, there's a tiny little, like I said, there's this tiny little part of my brain that somehow or another is still rational in all of this, because the rest of me was not. It was horrid. And I just started thinking, when I was in North Carolina, I was sleeping. And when I was in North Carolina, I was eating. I wasn't eating that much, but I was eating. And ever since I came here to Houston, I'm not sleeping. I'm not eating. And now I'm having these episodes, whatever the hell you want to call them, episodes. And it didn't feel natural. And I started thinking about, the whole, we flew up to North Carolina to get my truck and pick up my cat, wherever little shithead went, and to bring some of my stuff back, some of my clothes back for a while. And I got on the plane, and of course I'm in the throes of one of these episodes, and I'm thinking to myself, everybody on this plane thinks I'm some kind of damn drug addict because I'm acting like a frick. I look like I'm tweaking. I've seen enough tweakers. And that's what I look like. And so we get to North Carolina, and like I said, my older son is a police officer, and he picks us up in my truck. And we have to tell him, hey, Christopher, your mother is not a drug addict. Don't look at it that way. She's just we think she's having a really bad reaction to a medication. And he's like, okay. And I talked to him afterwards, and he was like, oh, hell yeah, you look like you were tweaking. I was like, no, not my cup of tea. Illegal drugs is something that I smoked weed a couple times when I was in high school, but even then it wasn't my cup of tea because I never smoked. So sucking smoke into my lungs just made me cough a lot. And one time I got like super paranoid off of, weed. And I was like, that's it for me. I'll just stick to alcohol. I've just never been my thing. And then I'm so sensitive to so many drugs. It's just not my thing. But, so I start putting the timeline together. And I'm like, okay, so I started having these issues when I got back to Houston. Well, what the hell else? Where's the pattern? Because I'm really good at that. I'm really good at identifying patterns. And I'm like, I think to myself, I started taking that fucking drug. I asked for it. That's when I started taking it. So I said, that's it. Cold turkey. No more. Oh, and here's the other thing. The other thing that it did to me is even when after these episodes, I was always twitchy. I was like always. I'd try to, even after the horrible episodes, and I would kind of calm down somewhat to normalcy, I still had these like random muscle twitches. It would, yeah. Here again, I go back. I go and I look up, do my own research. What do I find? Rare but severe side effect. Oh, and it gave me chest pain too. That was the other thing. Started having chest pain and bad. Here again, thank God I've got some really good friends who were willing to be on the phone with me to keep me from losing it or whatever. So I get on the internet, and sure enough, what do I find? Rare, but very, rare side effect. But if you have this side effect, seek medical attention. If you have chest pain and this, that, and the other, seek medical attention immediately. So I'm like, well, that's nice. I mean, it's nice to know. So I didn't seek medical attention, but I did cut it all off. Said, no, done. I'm done. No more. No more. No more of these drugs. No more. No. I don't care. I don't care. I don't care how bad. I don't care how bad it is. I don't care how sad I am. I don't care. I don't care. I will not take any more of these psychiatric drugs. Will not. And here's the moral of my story. The moral of my story is this. The medical provider that I was working with was going to increase my dosage, and they wanted me to go on a third drug. And when they said we want to put you on this third drug, I said no. So I take one drug, it has a side effect. I get on a second drug to treat the side effect for the first drug. The second drug has a side effect that you want to give me a third drug for. Where does it end? Not to mention, in the side effects for Zoloft, SSRI. Who knows how many people in this country are on this goddamn drug, okay? And maybe it does wonders for some people, but if you're one of those people like me, that it has the opposite effect on you, the opposite effect. What I read was, if you're one of the people who's like me, if you continue its usage or you up the dosage, you end up psychotic. It said symptoms of psychosis. So, if I hadn't had that little tiny bit of my brain that said, this is not natural, and where's the pattern, and put it together, I would have just gone along with what my medical provider told me, and I would have taken more of it, and more of it. And I would have ended up in a place that I don't want to be. How many people out there take this and they never question, and their doctors or never think that maybe this drug is not having the effect you want it to have? And here is so I did my lecture part, and now I've given you my confession part. And I'm going to give you the third part, which is the think about it part. In all of these horrible events that we have, these mass shooting events, that certain aspects of our society want to blame the firearm. One of the things that these people that perpetuate these acts, one of the things that they all seem, well, maybe not all, I don't want to say all, because that's a very high percentage of them share, is that they're on these types of drugs. They're on these types of drugs. And I can tell you from my own personal experience that you are not yourself. If you're one of the people that has this kind, that these drugs have this kind of effect on you, you are not yourself. And it is it was a horrifying experience for me because I like to be in control, and I 100% was not in control. And I feel like I really dodged a bullet. I feel like I really, really dodged a bullet. Because if I hadn't had that little part of my brain, and I guess maybe that's just like the core of me as a person that I just always question, and I always look for the pattern. I would have kept taking that, and they would have upped the dosage, and I would have lost myself. I would have lost myself. That all it takes is that little bit of change in your brain chemistry, for whatever reason, whether it's prescription drug or illegal drug or I don't know, whatever causes it, that little tiny shift in your brain chemistry can change who you are. So, but why are we blaming guns? Just like I said, I always look at the patterns. Why are we blaming guns? Just think about that.